Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Wolfpacker Show. My name's Ethan McDowell. I'm here with Noah Fleischman, and we have a lot to talk about today, folks. NC State has been quite busy, both in the transfer portal and the high school recruiting world, and along its coaching staff. We have coaching changes to talk about, man. There has been so much news pretty much constantly over the past week. Noah, I was on vacation last week and I still had to work a bunch because stuff kept happening. So we're going to talk about all of that. We're going to really dive into the Wolfpack's recent transfer portal additions. We already talked about the portal a little bit last episode, but this one we're going to really focus on how different the defense is going to look under new defensive coordinator DJ Elliott, with the new personnel that comes along with that, the outgoing transfers, the incoming transfers, and all of that stuff. Before we dive into it, want to shamelessly plug thewolfpacker.com. It's the website we both write for. If you're looking for transfer portal scoops, team analysis, you're looking for interviews with the folks that know Kurt Roper the best. If you want to hear from the transfer portal additions, why they're coming to NC State, that's all on the wolfpacker.com right now. You can join for $1 right now and get a week of access. You can just try it out. Give it a shot. And I promise you won't be disappointed. There's just a ton of really good info right now on our site, and it's worth checking out. Let's dive into it, though, Noah, because we have, like I said at the top, plenty to talk about today. First, let's just kind of set the scene with the two coordinator changes. Of course, Tony Gibson left for the head coaching job at Marshall. He's a guy that always wanted to be a head coach, so this was not unexpected. The Marshall opening is a perfect fit. He gets to go back to his home state. That's awesome. Really, really happy for Tony and wishing him luck there. The Pack had to find a defensive coordinator, Noah, and they landed on DJ Elliott, a former DC at Colorado, Kansas, and Temple, amongst other stops as an assistant that include the Philadelphia Eagles, Florida State. He has coached a lot of different places, and along with that addition came a lot of roster turnover immediately, despite them being able to keep Coach Freddie Autry-Lindsey on staff, who moved from nickels to safeties and nickels after Joe DeForest retired. They lost a lot of DBs to the transfer portal. Bishop Fitzgerald, Devin Boykin, Tamarcus Cooley, and Brandon Cisse all intend on transferring. So that's something to keep an eye on moving forward. Most of those guys have all visited at least one Power 4 school. I think Boykin's the only one we haven't heard about taking a visit yet, Noah. But Brandon Cisse is at South Carolina today. Visited Ole Miss early in the week. Bishop Fitzgerald is visiting USC. It's busy week in the transfer portal for everyone, including NC State. We don't really have to talk that much about the outgoing guys, I think, Noah, but I did want to use that kind of news peg to ask you about the defensive coordinator. What are your initial thoughts on DJ Elliott from the research you've done, from what you've heard from other folks on the Pack's new DC?
Yeah, it's an interesting hire, right? He's not a guy who he's not coming from a coordinator position in his previous stop. He was at Baylor this past season as an analyst for like a advisory kind of role, and then before that was with the Eagles as linebackers coach. But he's an interesting hire. He solves one of the NC State's problems, which is generating consistent pass rush. That's kind of his MO as a defensive coordinator. He gets in the backfield, he makes tackles for a loss, gets sacks. NC State was able to do that at times, but also struggled at times in generating consistent pass rush, and he'll bring an opportunity to bring in some more true edge rushers, which we'll talk about one today on the show. But overall, interesting hire, one that's kind of outside the box a little bit, in the sense that there's no clear connection to Dave Doran. There's no clear connection to really anybody on NC State staff. This is a networking hire. Doran knows people, and he wasn't afraid to go outside the realm of who he's comfortable with, which he's noted. During the search, Ethan, he talked about bringing somebody in from the outside is a good thing. And he'll bring in some new ideas, some new scheme. And of course, he'll be the one calling plays on Saturdays. But yeah, Coach Freddie, the interim defensive coordinator, promoted the co-defensive coordinator. So no, he won't be calling plays on Saturdays, but he'll be involved in the game planning process. And yeah, so it'll be interesting. But yeah, he's been in a lot of places. He's experienced, and he's a heck of a recruiter too. I mean, he's already on the road right now. This is a guy that's got a recruiting background, and that might pay off. Really, it's already paid off. In the transfer portal from what we've seen this past week.
Yeah, if they can put together a somewhat solid product on the field defensively, I think linebacker recruiting will actually take a step forward with DJ Elliott in the building. I think he could be a really, really solid recruiter for the Pack. One area where they didn't go outside, and like you said, they've talked about those outside hires as it's good to bring in outside, viewpoints, and that's something they kind of said when they hired Robert and I to bring him in as offensive coordinator a couple years ago. Well, he's out of a job now after a couple of years with the Pack. The Pack promoted Kurt Roper, the Wolfpack's quarterbacks coach, is now the OC, and they promoted offensive quality control coach Kevin Locklear to tight ends coach. So offensive staff staying the same, not bringing in anybody new, just internal promotions there. As a result, we didn't really see any attrition or anything on that side of the ball following that popular move inside the building, especially with CJ Bailey, your star freshman quarterback. That's a big move to keep him happy. That's the coach that he's grown really, really close to, as you'd expect over the past year. And keeping Roper in the building helps keep CJ there, and doesn't like if you bring in a new quarterbacks coach and a new offensive coordinator, you're kind of resetting CJ's development, right? Or at least setting it back slightly as he learns a new system. That's not going to be an issue now. You're going to Kurt Rober's going to be able to tailor a system tightly to the quarterback that he knows best, and that just makes a lot of sense to me. And I think that'll all go pretty smoothly there. It's just with both Roper and Elliott at their last coordinator stops, neither of them had a ton of success. So that's something to keep an eye on. And the tools are there, I think, for both of them. And if you go through both of their long coaching resumes, like we should state that these are both accomplished, like long-term veteran coaches that have a ton of experience. If you pick and choose like DJ Elliott's recruiting at FSU, which was extremely solid. The last place he was really at that was not a, bottom level like Power 5 school, not to insult, Colorado and Kansas, but historically those two programs just haven't been very good. Temple also one of the worst teams in the FCS or FBS historically. So he hasn't exactly had a ton of talent to work with. And I'm just intrigued to see what happens when he does, because he will at NC State. There will be talent on this roster, even with the outgoing attrition. So we'll see. And speaking of talent, Noah, I think we should just go ahead and dive into the transfer portal discussion. He's brought in 4 transfer portal commits on the defensive side of the ball so far. We're going to go through each of them, and then maybe tease also a couple upcoming visitors that could help bolster that side of the ball. But let's start with AJ Richardson, Noah, a linebacker from Norfolk State. I am personally a huge fan of taking transfers that are from a lower level of football but have put up big stats, maybe someone that flew under the radar as a recruit. And AJ is a prime example of that. He's a linebacker from North Carolina, so he's coming back to his home state after recording 100 total tackles as a sophomore, and he was an FCS All-American. And at 6'1", 245, I think he projects as a middle linebacker for the Pack, regardless of what scheme DJ Elliott ends up running. And he has 2 years of eligibility left, so you have multiple years there for him to come in and make an impact. Noah, what did you think of them bringing in AJ? I thought it was a pretty solid start to the defensive portal class.
He was one they brought in before making the hire of DJ Elliott, which is kind of interesting to note. They targeted him. He's a guy I think Elliott would have taken anyway for what they want to do. Most likely running a 4 linebacker, scheme, at least at times for having 4 linebackers in the field. This is a guy that fits right in perfectly. You talk about moving up from the FCS level. NC State had success with that this year with Devon Marshall, who didn't put up as crazy numbers as AJ Richardson did at that same level. He was just a pretty good, FCS corner, came in, made a really big impact. I think was probably one of the most underrated additions last year's portal class. AJ Richardson could be that next year. And this is a guy that, when you post 100 tackles in a season, that says a lot. He led the MEAC in tackles, 9.5 of them for a loss. He had an 18 tackle game with 5.5 tackles for a loss against Townsend earlier this season. So, yeah, he's got a nose for the ball. And this is a guy that will fit an NC State linebacker. Like, when you think NC State linebacker, he fits that role pretty well. And just his ability to get after, the ball, swarm to the ball, and, of course, hit the quarterback when he can. So I like it. Bring him back to the home state. NC State likes to recruit North Carolina guys, especially out of the portal when they can find the connection. And they did that with Richardson. So yes, he's coming from a mediocre FCS program, but he's a guy that's not a mediocre FCS player.
Well said. Totally agree. I think he is one of the underrated portal additions on either side of the ball so far this year. I'm excited to see what he could bring to the pack, especially when you have, Caden Fordham with his season-ending injury. There's no guarantee he'll be ready for the season opener. You needed someone, I think, to come in as that Mike role, especially with Jalen Parker leaving. You really didn't have much experience at Mike linebacker behind Fordham, and yeah, Richardson will bring that in. And I think if you have to see him play meaningful snaps in the first few weeks as Fordham heals up, yeah, I think you can be pretty comfortable with that. We'll see how he progresses in spring practice. But AJ is a great addition to the pack. And, I was surprised he didn't get more Power 5 looks, honestly. I think NC State did a good job of wrapping up his recruitment before he really gained much traction elsewhere. So props to the staff for that as well. So they got AJ before they hired DJ. Then there was a long gap for the next defensive transfer portal commitment when they landed a surprise commitment from Jaron Sensabaugh. If that name sounds familiar, Wolfpack fans, it's because the Pack was recruiting him pretty much exactly a year ago. He was a freshman corner for Missouri this year, a longtime Pack target who camped at NC State last year, earned an offer, and then committed to Vanderbilt before decommitting. He officially visited NC State, officially visited Mizzou. I believe he took an official to Tennessee as well, and ends up picking the Tigers out of high school, spends 1 year there, and then ends up with the Pack. No, his recruitment was really interesting. He did not visit NC State as a transfer. He entered the portal Saturday afternoon, I believe, around noon, he told me. And by the night, he was like, I'm done. I'm ready to commit. He heard from Georgia Tech and Stanford. Arizona State was on him as well out of the portal. But it didn't really matter. He had that existing connection with cornerbacks coach Brian Mitchell, and that led him to the Wolfpack. That is a good example of something this staff does really well, Noah. NC State prioritizes not burning those bridges even when a priority recruit goes elsewhere. They didn't with Sensabaugh. So when Sensabaugh entered the portal, they were able to land a former 4-star recruit, someone that I think will, even if he doesn't make an impact immediately, will be able to down the road. He has 4 years of eligibility left. You're basically bringing in a freshman. So we've just spent a year developing in the SEC, and 6'1" physical defensive back. And I really like him. Noah, did you have any thoughts on bringing in Jaron? What kind of impact could he have, like on the corner room, in your opinion? Because of course they do have to replace potentially both of their starters.
Yeah, I think this is a guy that can not, compete for some playing time next year. I don't know if he'll slot into a starting role right away. We'll see what NC State continues to do in the transfer portal. Especially, not only that, they've got guys on the roster that have been on the team for a few years that could also push. But I could definitely see him, being in competition, pushing for snaps. We'll see him on the field next year for sure. And I just think that Jaron Sensabaugh, as you touched on, this is why, NC State doesn't burn bridges during the high school recruiting. They're able to secure a commitment from a guy in 24 hours, and you don't really see that. But that's kind of what the transfer portal does these days. Guys on the market try to get his commitment as fast as possible. NC State was able to do that with Jaron Sensabaugh. NFL, background with his dad playing for multiple teams in the league for 8 years at safety, and he's a UNC alum, so I'm sure the Tar Heel fans aren't too pleased that a legacy recruit is playing just down the road, and he's got 4 years of eligibility, so he could be, making UNC's offense. Not too happy for years to come.
Absolutely, always good to land a UNC legacy. So, in addition to those two, they brought in 2 Temple transfers. Both, that's at the school that DJ Elliott was most recently at before Baylor, before the Eagles. He was a defensive coordinator for Temple. And they brought in 2 players for a visit, cornerback Jamel Johnson and edge rusher Trey Thomas. Both ended up committing. I want to talk about Johnson first. He actually didn't overlap with Elliott. He only spent last year with Temple after transferring up from Charleston Southern. But he was a productive defensive back in his 1 year with the Owls. He recorded 47 total tackles, 2 interceptions. At 5'11", 195 pounds, he's a little shorter than your typical NC State cornerback usually is, but they are bringing him in to play outside corner. And I thought his tape was pretty encouraging, man. I thought he's a willing tackler. He tracks the ball well. He can make plays on the ball. And he was the second highest graded defender on, a pretty rough Temple squad. He was one of the best players on that unit this fall. Clearly proved he can play at the FBS level after spending a few years as a really good player for Charleston Southern, who actually played against NC State as a freshman a couple of years ago. So he has 1 year of eligibility left. He's going to come in looking to prove himself. And I think he looks like a potential starter, Noah. I think he has the ability to come in and make an instant impact.
Yeah, I would pencil him in as a starter right now. When you look at his numbers from Temple, they're really good. This is a guy that stuck at the FBS level extremely well. He was targeted 46 times this past fall, just gave up 17 receptions, Ethan. That's a 37% completion rate. He'll take that all day from a corner. And the other thing that was really impressive about him, when he did, when he was, guys made catches over him, he only allowed 54 total yards after the catch on those 17 receptions. That's 3 yards per completion. That's basically catch, and then you're on the ground, after a couple steps. So it's really impressive from him. I think this is a corner that will slot into one of those 2 starting spots that NC State currently has open, with Aiden White being gone as well, with his eligibility exhausted. So Jamel Johnson, one of those guys you pull from the portal as a plug-and-play kind of guy. He'll fit that pretty well, and he can line up other places too. He did play 543 snaps at outside corner, 76 in the box, and he was in the slot 21 times last year. So I'd expect him outside corner against East Carolina to be on the field pretty early in that game.
Yeah, and maybe you see him slide inside every now and then in a nickel or a dime package, So something to keep an eye on. Yeah, versatile defensive back, makes plays on the ball, doesn't give up a ton of receptions, he gave up 4 touchdowns, but not very many long touchdowns.
Mm-hmm.
Like he's not giving up explosive plays because, like you said, when the receiver catches the ball, he's bringing them down. He's not allowing much after the catch. I think we can pencil him in as a starter at a bare minimum. I think you can kind of Sharpie in Devon Marshall as a starter for next year. I think he was good when he played this year and maybe better next year. And then you're adding competition with Jackson Vick, who was solid in bursts in the snaps he did get, but I don't know, you want to go into the spring with just Jackson Vick as your only other corner with experience on the field. So, and they have talented young guys in that room too. But bringing in Johnson, add some experience. You get another adult in the room that's going to know what it takes to perform at this level, and it's a good addition. Definitely a big fan of bringing in him, and I think he is also one of the better portal additions they got. An underrated guy that I'm a fan of, I think kind of fits exactly what they needed to bring in this cycle is Trey Thomas, the other Temple guy who actually did overlap with DJ Elliott in his one season with Temple. Trey, again, another guy with 1 year of eligibility left. He is 6'4", 230 pounds, and has the frame, has the athleticism kind of to play whatever outside linebacker spot that NC State really needs him to. We don't know what defense DJ Elliott is going to run yet. Of course, NC State ran the 3-3-5 for all of Tony Gibson's tenure and retained a lot of that staff and a lot of that personnel. But DJ also ran a 3-4 at most of his other stops as a defensive coordinator. So you're looking at, okay, maybe they keep the 3-3-5, but at a minimum, we're going to see, I think, more multiple looks, more looks where you have a true pass rushing linebacker on the field that's, a true edge rusher, which is a role that just really didn't exist in Tony Gibson's defense. So Trey fits that. During his time at Temple, he played outside linebacker. He played defensive end. He played a hybrid role where he was doing a little bit of both as an edge rusher. He's done a little bit of everything, and I think that makes him a perfect addition for the Pack as we learn more about what this defense is actually going to look like. In his 4 games under DJ Elliott, he was extremely productive. He had a season-ending injury after those 4 games, but before that, he had 3 sacks and 4 tackles for loss. So the role he was playing at that point clearly matched his skill set, and I think we'll probably see him back in that role this fall. No, you texted a little bit with Trey. You've talked to him a little bit. What are your thoughts on his addition to the Wolfpack and what he could bring to this new look Wolfpack defense?
Yeah, I think it's a guy that NC State really wanted to play in this DJ Elliott system. He obviously has played in it before, as we mentioned, for 4 games, which is what people go, look at him and go edge rusher. But like those 4 games in that scheme that he was playing, he proved he can get after the quarterback. As we said, he really enjoyed his visit to NC State, and it was pretty easy, I think, for NC State to secure his commitment, especially with DJ Elliott being on campus. They're back together. They have a good relationship, and it'll be exciting. He's played all over the field, as you mentioned, but DJ Elliott had him playing at a linebacker role in 2022, or kind of, mix. This is a guy that's played all over the defense, as you said. So he could play anywhere. I wouldn't be surprised to see him, even in a 3-man front, if they put him on the field as just defensive end, too. Like, this isn't a guy that just has to play outside linebacker. This guy can play everything. So I'm really, really intrigued to see what they do with him. We could see him play on that, outside linebacker role, but then they take that extra linebacker off the field, but leave him out there and just take a defensive lineman off the field instead. So we'll see what happens. I'm really intrigued by what they can do with him. He's played defensive end, as you said. He played linebacker. He played jack, which was a mix of both at Temple this year. So we'll see what happens.
Yeah, so those are the 4 defensive commits right now. So you have 2 linebackers and 2 corners. Let's break down where the Pack goes from here, though, Noah. They still have needs to fill on the defense, and they're working hard to fill them. Defensive line is the one position that I think we were focused on as they needed to bring in a defensive end this cycle. Current expectation is they're not going to right now. As far as I know, no defensive linemen visiting down the last stretch. Now, they could certainly find guys for the spring portal window, and I'm sure they will. But they tried, man. They brought in a few visitors along the defensive line, but didn't land any. It's probably tough to recruit to a defensive front right now that for most of the portal cycle, you didn't know who was going to be the defensive coordinator. So that's going to be a position that we're going to have to see how the young guys develop, because if they don't bring in any transfers, you need young guys to really step up. You're asking Isaiah Shirley to take Davin Van's in the spot in the starting lineup pretty much and take off running, because last year Peyton Wilson leaves, they don't bring in a transfer to replace him, and we definitely, I think, saw a drop off in that unit. I think that's safe to say. And Davin Van, again, was the best player on NC State's defense, and you see him leave. And then if you think you have the young guys to fill in that role, then that's great. But the Pack was pushing for defensive ends in this portal window, and that is going to be, I'd say, probably the number one thing to watch during spring practice is what that defensive line looks like, because they're going to be asking a lot out of some underclassmen this spring. But hey, they'll keep exhausting their options in the transfer portal. More people will continue entering, and there will be options, and I expect the Pack to push. But they are going to add prospects elsewhere, in my opinion. After losing Bishop Fitzgerald and Devin Boykin, who probably would have been your starting safeties next year, they're bringing in other safety prospects. They have one all-conference DB scheduled for an official visit starting tomorrow. You can find more info on him on the wolfpacker.com. I'm not going to give away too much on this podcast, but they're also bringing in a linebacker who is a former highly ranked recruit with offers from pretty much everywhere, with 4 years of eligibility remaining, who could be really, really solid. So they're bringing in 2 portal visitors in the back half of this week. And if they want to bring them in for the spring semester, man, they've got to move fast. It's Wednesday as we're recording this, and the ad drop period for NC State ends Friday. So you have to be enrolled in classes by Friday to join the program for the spring. Doesn't mean you can't commit, doesn't mean you can't sign, but to be a part of NC State's winter workouts and spring practice, you have to be enrolled in classes by the end of this week. So you have one transfer visitor getting there Thursday, another getting there Friday. Can the pack move fast enough to get that going? We'll see. But I think both of the guys they have visiting would be big time additions, guys that could contribute pretty quickly to the pack. So that's something to keep an eye on. But yeah, no, am I leaving out anything here as far as like existing needs defensively? Like I'd like to see them bring in one more experienced safety. If they could get another pass rusher, linebacker type, that'd be great. And then defensive line. What do you think?
Yeah, I think that that's pretty fitting, what they have left to fulfill. I think they're done at corner for now. They've got enough of that room. They might go back, after the end of spring. I will say spring window will be interesting to watch for NC State. Because yes, you would like to fill their needs now, get them on campus, get them their bodies going with Thunder and his staff, and get them on for practice. But I do think the spring window is going to be a busy time for NC State on the defensive side of the ball, just because they want to see what they have, in some of these spots and realize, oh, we don't have enough here, or realize there's too much in one spot. So we'll see what happens. But yeah, I think that what you outlined is pretty accurate. Offensively, they're pretty set. We've seen what they've done. They bolstered the offensive line early in the portal window. Their skill position players are all basically back for next year, and they've got a quarterback. So don't expect any really much more movement on that side of the ball either.
Yeah. And we talked about a little more with the offensive guys in the last episode. So if you want to hear about the offensive line additions and stuff, go check that episode out. But I think that's all of our portal discussion today, man. I'm expecting a eventful next couple of days. I should mention the Pack added a running back recruit, DeAndre Desanor. I apologize if I'm mispronouncing your name, DeAndre, but he took a low key visit to the Pack early this week, committed, and is supposed to enroll and sign this week and be on campus in time by the deadline and join the Pack as an early enrollee. He's probably going to be the only running back signee in this class, and the Pack filled a need with him. He's explosive, fast, held offers from Texas, Florida State, Miami, the who's who of college football. So good addition there. And I think that is all the football stuff for now, man. It's a busy week. The coaches are on the road visiting prep prospects. We wrote about that yesterday. So go check out the wolfpacker.com for all of the latest recruiting scoops as far as that goes. But before we get out of here, I did want to talk a little bit about basketball. There's two teams that are having different starts schedules. No, I'm going to turn it over to you to talk about the men first, who are 8-6 so far this season, and things haven't been pretty lately with back-to-back ACC losses.
They haven't. No, they're 8-6. They did open ACC play at the win over Florida State, but since then have not gone too well. 2 road losses at Virginia, at Wake Forest. 2 games that felt like they should have won, especially at Virginia. They were up 14 in the second half, blew a lead, and the rest was history there. They gave up 2 major runs in both games. A 17-1 run at Wake Forest put them away. So that's been the biggest problem, is giving up runs in the second half defensively and not being able to score. When you do that, not really a recipe for success. Wednesday night, they host Notre Dame. Saturday afternoon, they host North Carolina. It's a big-time week for them to get back to the win column. At home, they need to defend home court. This is a team that does not have an at-large resume for the NCAA tournament. And as it sits now, it's a team that's going to have to win the ACC tournament again to get back to March. And to do that, they do not want to play 5 games in 5 days again. They need to win as many ACC games as possible. So far, Ethan, it's not going their way. A win over the Irish would be very important to avoid a 3-game losing streak, but also to build momentum before you play North Carolina, who just beat SMU by a healthy margin at home in the Smith Center. So big game on Saturday afternoon, but first they need to take care of Notre Dame to get back in the win column, get momentum going the right way before the Tar Heels show up.
Absolutely. And on the other side of things, the women's team has not lost since the days leading up to Thanksgiving. The Pack is on a 7-game winning streak and lately has looked really solid. They beat Boston College by 39 on Sunday, and then the week prior picked up a close win against Clemson. That was, the score was closer, a little closer than the game actually was down the stretch there. Back-to-back really solid wins for the Pack. The Pack is 3-0 in ACC play. The third win out of that group was a blowout over Louisville on the road. So I think that's a team that had to figure things out with the injury to Caitlin Weimer in the post. She's no longer with the team as she continues to recover. She obviously will not play the rest of this year. But they recently made a change to starting lineup with Tilda Trigger in there at center, and I think she has progressed really, really quickly and has been solid. And the guards are who the guards are: Sanaya Rivers, Isaiah James, Zoe Brooks, Madison Hayes. They're awesome. They're really good basketball players who are playing like experienced, talented guards that can win a lot of games purely on their own merit. They're getting hot right now without Zam Jones in the lineup too, who sustained an injury during practice that's knocked her out for a couple of weeks. I think they haven't really had a huge test. Like Louisville's solid for sure, but they haven't had a huge test in ACC play. Tomorrow they play a ranked Cal team on the road in a 10 p.m. Eastern time tip-off. So that'll be an intriguing matchup for the Pack. But they've just taken care of business since they lost 3 games to South Carolina, TCU, and LSU. So they don't have a bad loss yet. I wouldn't say they have a signature win yet either, Noah. For now, the team pretty much is who we've thought they were since the beginning of the year, except we're starting to see the progression out of the post players. And if that continues, that will dictate the ceiling of this team. And I think they can still be a pretty dang good team in a year where the ACC, by its standards, is kind of down as well. So they should have a chance to still contend for that league title and make a run in March. But all right, man. I think that's all we had to talk about today. Appreciate you all tuning in for our early January update on everything going on, because the transfer portal never rests, as we are finding out down the stretch of this week. We'll be back soon with another update, maybe to recap some more commitments if this weekend goes well, and talk about some basketball. And we will all see you soon, and appreciate you tuning in for another episode of the Wolfpacker Show.